everybody. It's my great honor, and I'm so excited to introduce Renee Sonnen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, we
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Well, thank you for coming.
All right. I just always like to have a moment of silence to ask whatever higher being you think about and pray about, if you do at all. If you don't, it's okay. Just be quiet with me. Because I am here on a mission. I'm not here for any other reason except I am on a mission to really make real change in our world. Let's just have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And that moment of silence for me is for lots of reasons. I am Renee King-Sonnen. I grew up in Texas. I'm from Texas, and I married my husband Tommy Sonnen not once but twice. And he is a multi-generational cattle rancher. He had his grandpa, great-grandpa, they all had slaughterhouses in Texas. His family, the Sonnens, drove in cattle like from San Antonio back in the 1800s. And the brand was S-O-N. It was the Sun brand. My husband has the brand. That's why I said, you know, you need to bring my husband out here at some point. He'll bring you the brands. He'll bring you the spurs his great-grandpa wore when they would load up those cows, free range, and boy howdy, they were cowboying it all the way to Houston and Alvin, Texas, where they had slaughterhouses. And they had farms, and they had ranches. So, that's who I married, my husband, Tommy. And he was not cattle ranching when I met him the first time. He was working for Dow Chemical. And he retired from Dow Chemical after 40 years. The cattle ranching business skipped a generation, but he always was involved with helping his family, you know, whether it be egg farming or chickens or whatever. There was always something going on with his grandma and farming. But he was a big hunter. He's still alive. He doesn't hunt. Well, he does hunt, but he hunts like arrowheads and, you know, metal. He finds, you know, Civil War relics and things like that. My husband loves to hunt. I mean, you put a metal detector in his hand or a big old mound somewhere where he can find some relics, man, he's all about it. So, the first time I married Tommy, it didn't work out so well because, well, we, you know, I'm pretty candid about my life. I have to be, because it takes a certain type of character and personality to go against tradition, which is what I've done. And what I've done is I don't, you know, pardon the term bucked, but I pretty much bucked tradition when, you know, whenever I married Tommy and started having real issues on the cattle ranch. The first time we married, it wasn't at all like that. I had an alcohol problem, and it wasn't until in that marriage that I started getting help for myself. And our marriage couldn't withstand the trauma, really, of what went on in my first marriage. We loved each other immensely, but it was just what happened during that time was too hard for our marriage, so we divorced. And then 10 years later, we remarried. And when we remarried, I was sober, I was selling real estate, I was good, and I always was doing something in the world, you know, like ambitious-wise, like an entrepreneur. I've had yoga studios. I used to perform with my own country western show band. So I never had a problem, you know, in the world, doing whatever, making money. That was never a problem for me. I always was a very, very good business person and did stuff like that. I always did what I wanted to do. And so when he married me the second time, yeah, I was selling real estate. I had a medical spa that I, you know, that I was involved in, and moved on the cattle ranch that he had bought. He had bought a cattle ranch when we were divorced those 10 years. And first time we were married, that's when we met. I was actually singing at the time. The first time we ever met, I was singing in a nightclub at the Hilton, and Tommy walks in. It was late at night, and he walks in the door around closing time, and man, he looked so good, and he was like so clean cut and just so charming looking, you know. And he went and sat down at the bar, and I always had this gig where I walked around with a wireless microphone, and I had a spotlight, and I walked off stage, and I went and sat in his lap, and just started singing crazy. And it had been crazy, I promise, ever since. Okay, that was an omen. That was an omen. I always tell him that was an omen of things to come. Because when we divorced, and then we remarried, I didn't want to move on to cattle ranch. It was not something I really wanted to do. I was a rhinestone cowgirl. Okay, I had a collection of leather boots. I had a lot of leather clothes. I lived in rodeos, not because I really liked to rodeo, but I loved hanging out at barbecue fest, you know, barbecue cook-offs, chili cook-offs. You know, I was on a committee, the llama committee. I mean, I just, you know, I loved the rodeos and all the fun that went with it. And but when we got married, I started, you know, I mean, I didn't want to move to the cattle ranch because, you know, I didn't like the dirt. I didn't like the whole ambiance of the cattle ranch, honestly. I mean, I was a city girl.
It smelled too.
Huh?
It smelled.
It did. It smelled. There was, yeah, it definitely did. And it was dirt. It was stuff, bugs and stuff. And but I, you know, it was kind of like, what's that? Zsa Zsa Gabor, Ava Gabor, and that guy Brian. Green Acres. You remember that? Well, it was like that. It was like Green Acres is the place. So I mean, I was my husband over here and me over here, and I was wanting him to come to the city. He was wanting me to come to the country, and neither would the twain would meet. And finally, he said, Renee, if you want to get remarried, you're gonna have to move here. I ain't moving. So I always blame him for what happened. It's his fault. He could have chose. He had a moment in time when he could have made a different decision. He didn't. He made the decision. I moved to the country and started falling in love with the cows. I always loved animals. You know, I was always an animal lover. I was that girl in school that, you know, would bring home all the strays. And I love animals. Now, it never occurred to me to love a cow or a chicken or a goat or a pig. It never occurred to me one bit that I was even remotely supposed to, or that they would even care if I did. You know, but I started falling in love with the cow. Now, how did that happen? It didn't happen naturally. I didn't even want anything to do with the cattle ranch. Whenever I moved there, I was still doing my music. I was still doing my real estate. I was producing a show called Renee King's Honky Tonk Queens. Renee King and the Honky Tonk Queens, that was the show at the time. And you know, just my meditation, my yoga, just doing what I do. But he wanted me involved in the cattle ranch. He wanted my help. And so I rejected it though. I was like, I don't want to do it. You do that, I'll do this. I moved here, you know. I moved here, now you go do all that. And so one day he comes home and he said, Renee, there's this cattle rancher up the road and he's got these 2 baby calves that need a mom. And I was like, oh, really? Well, could never have any kids of my own. So I love animals and they're babies. Who doesn't love a little baby calf? I mean, they're so cute. So I told my husband, I said, yeah, really? I said, so what's up with that? He said, well, there are 2 babies. They don't have a mama. Go figure. So many baby calves don't have mamas. It just blows my mind. But now that I'm on the other side. But anyway, I digress. I told my husband, I said, well, yeah, let's go look at them. So we went. They were the cutest, bouncing little bundles of joy. And one of those baby calves, her name is Rowdy Girl. That's Rowdy Girl. You got that on your table right there? That's my Rowdy Girl right there. And when I got her, that's how she got her name. She was just bouncy, full of life, so freaking cute, and she depended wholeheartedly on me to feed her in the morning, to feed her in the evening, and he didn't have to beg me to do it. He didn't have to try to prod me to do it. I wanted to do it. I fell in love with this baby girl like nobody's business, and she became my child. I loved her so much, and I wasn't a vegan. I wasn't anything plant-based. I mean, you don't even think about stuff like that on a cow ranch unless you want a divorce, you know. And so I'll talk about that later. But anyway, I started feeding her, and when I was bottle feeding her, you know, the most interesting things started to happen. It was like, I mean, I'm a spiritual girl, okay? I really kind of plug in spiritually. I have a deep faith in God, and I started feeding her, and then while I was feeding her, she was feeding me. She was feeding me. Like, I had moments when I was feeding her where I was just quiet, and I would just look at all the other cows, and I would see them all one by one, and they were all black Angus. I mean, I never noticed any difference in any of them, really. They were just a herd of cattle out there. But when I was bottle feeding her, they all became individuals to me. I started seeing them. I started seeing the way their brow was different, or the way their little skin under their neck fell, or their eyelashes, or I noticed maybe a little white speck that might be under their arm. And I started naming them. Oh, big mistake. I went home, I told Tommy, I am naming them cows. There's red over there, there's blue bodied, and there's blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, no, Renee, don't. Put his foot down. Don't you name them cows. I was like, well, what do you mean don't name the cows? I mean, it's kind of like when I was feeding them, it was just kind of obvious. That was the next thing to do. As soon as I started identifying them as individuals, they became somebody. Okay, they weren't livestock to me then, or they weren't a herd of cattle. They became somebody. And I was naming them. I said, what do you mean I can't name them? He said, well, if you name them, we can't send them to the sale farm. We can't send them to sale if you start naming them. And I said, why? Why is that? So I started asking really tough questions. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. He never wanted to talk about it. King-Sonnen never wanted, every time I'd say something about, why don't we kill the cows here on our property and eat them? How come we buy them at the store, the package is all chopped up in the store, and we buy that? Why don't we, slaughter our own animals? He didn't like me asking questions like that. He'd say, well, because. He finally answered me. I can't eat animals I know. Oh, I put my foot down, really? So, we can't eat Rowdy Girl, but we can eat her daughter, as long as we don't know her? I was like, how does that even a thing? And so I started my brain started and I'm not a vegan. I'm a Texas girl going to rodeos, I'm just trying to make sense of what we're doing. I'm trying to somehow in my brain make sense of the fact that I started having relationships with cows. And you're not supposed to do that if you're a cattle rancher. anyway, this kept happening, and Tommy, he retired from Dow Chemical in 2014, and we married in 2010. So between 2010 and 2014, a lot of stuff happened. He started having to hide from me when he would sell the calves. Because see, we were a cow-calf operation. Y'all know what that is? Cow-calf? Cow-calf operation is when you raise cattle and that you don't artificially inseminate the mama, you know, the cow. They actually breed normally. And they have their babies on the property, and they're raised there with their mama for about 6 months. And so they bond, they get relationships. I mean, everybody bonds, and then at 6 months, that red trailer would come in, and my husband and his partner Robert would round up all the babies. That's who we got. That's who we sold. That's how we made our living on. Like that was. It ain't like we just made our living on that. But that was our retirement. That's how we paid the taxes. That's how we afforded all the equipment, bought the hay. I mean, that's how we did everything. We had to sell those calves, right? I started like freaking out. First time it happened, I'm not vegan. I am freaking not vegan. I am having now what I know as an awakening on the Texas cow ranch. I didn't know what was happening. I was just like, what? Because we were out there, and all of a sudden, he was rounding up these babies. They had a chain over the trailer, and him and his partner were getting them babies in there. He was baiting them. He put the food in there, so the babies would go in. The mamas couldn't go in. After a few days, 5 or 6, 7 baby calves would be loaded up in that trailer, and they would be ready to do that, where they would pull the chain, slide the door, and take off. And those babies would burst in tears. I mean, hey, there wasn't no salt in their eyes, there wasn't sweat. They would burst, like they were like shocked. And the mamas, this is the first time, I remember this like it was yesterday. The mamas would chase after that trailer all the way up Highway 35. We had 1.5 miles of highway frontage in Angleton. And those mamas would traverse that entire frontage on Highway 35 as that red trailer went up Highway 35, wailing the most ungodly grief because we had stolen their babies and taken them away from them. Hey, that's what you do. That's how you make money. See, I began to get very, very conflicted. I love my husband, but I started just absolutely having so much trauma. I literally started going nuts because I started seeing baby calves. I started seeing cows like dogs and cats. And of course, if you do that, you can't be a cattle rancher. Come on, you know? You can't. So, I began to have, you know, a lot of, I began to do a lot of research because I told my husband, you know, there's something not right with this. You know, he said, well, you don't mind spending the money. He'd bring the receipts home from the sale barn and throw them on my desk, you know. He'd say, you want to give me that money back? And I was like, oh, I just wanted to punch him. Because it was true. I was in it too. I was an accomplice. I was like, I'm an accomplice. And I'm not a vegan. I'm still eating Chick-fil-A sandwiches and hot dogs and whatever, but I'm just noticing what's going on around me. I'm starting to observe and see what's really happening. And you know, I came home one day and I told Tommy, I said, look, I'm having real problems here. You know, I think if I'm going to do this, if I'm gonna be a cattle rancher with you, then we need to kill one of our own animals. I started researching humane meat, right? I was doing all my research, and I thought, well, there's gotta be a better way to do this. I mean, if we're gonna raise these animals up and we're gonna do this, and we should do it the right way. We should just, by God, kill our own animals, get a community together, and figure out a way to put that meat in the freezer and split it up with everybody, and that was my idea. Okay, I was like, and Tommy said, "You're crazy." I said, "Why? Somebody else is eating our animals. Why can't we?" I can't do that. I can't do that, Renee. I said, "Well, that's what we're going to do. Otherwise, we're hypocrites. We are just hypocrites." And so, anyway, I talked him into choosing one that we were going to. I think, looking back on all this, I can see that the Spirit in me was like moving me to push my husband over the brink. That's what it was. Because I knew that we would never end up slaughtering one of those animals. But I also knew that if I didn't push, kind of like, you know, I've never had a baby, but I hear it ain't very pleasant, you know? So, you know, so when you are trying to deliver a concept or an idea, or you're trying to, or you don't even know you're doing it. I didn't know I was birthing the first ever documented beef cattle ranch vegan conversion in the world. See, I didn't know I was having that baby. We're the first documented beef cattle ranch vegan conversion in the world. Now, there might have been somebody else did it, but they didn't tell nobody. I shouted it from the rooftop. And it became a thing. That's why I was telling you, yeah, oh yeah, it became a thing, all right. And so my husband was, we were constantly having fights because he had to hide it from me because I cried. I would just bawl and wail and I hate what we're doing. I can't stand it. And I don't want to do this. And so he'd have to hide. Every time he'd get ready to sell the calves, he'd have to like do when I wasn't there. And so about February of 2014, that was the last load of calves that we sent to the sale barn. And that's when, it was between February and October. I went vegan October 31st, 2014 on Halloween. And it was between that time that it was the worst. We almost divorced during that time period. And granted, when people have an affair, usually that's a good reason to get a divorce. And you would have thought when I went vegan on a cattle ranch that I'd have had an affair. It was probably worse, honestly. I mean, you can rectify an affair, but going vegan on a cattle ranch, who does that shit? And I mean, really, who does that? Nobody had done it. That had been documented everywhere, anywhere. Oh, there was this one man named Howard Lyman, but he didn't do anything he didn't do what I did. But that's the only person I knew that had actually gone vegan and was a cattle rancher. So between that time period, I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos because my husband kept telling me that all that stuff I was reading about was PETA propaganda. That's what he called it, PETA propaganda. And I was like, really? So I'm going to start looking to see if all this is PETA propaganda. Well, it wasn't no propaganda. I started seeing how animals were slaughtered. I started watching them go into those sale barns and I started watching what happens. I wanted to know. A lot of times people will eat animal products, but they won't watch how they're killed. They want to keep that removed from them. They want to eat it, but don't show me. I was the opposite. I began to be that person that wanted to see how did I get my chicken on my plate? How did I get that bacon on my plate? How did I get those eggs on my plate? I started wanting to know, and I'm a cattle rancher's wife. I am not a vegan. I am doing hardcore research. And the stuff I started seeing started freaking me, the you know what out. I could not believe I would actually eat what come out of a chicken's butt. I was like, I started watching these videos and going, I am eating that? And it's actually legal? I mean, it's like, I started like realizing when I was watching all these videos that there's something wrong. And I started realizing that the big wrong is that animal agriculture owns the planet. Animal agriculture owns the media, the way that the school systems, it owns everything. And as we started going along during those few months, I started becoming Tommy's worst nightmare. I wasn't a vegan, but I kind of liken it like, you ever watch vampire movies? Don't if you do. I love vampire movies, okay? I don't like a lot of things, but a good vampire movie is, to me, I don't know why, but I do. And going vegan's kind of like that. Now, why is that? Because, when a vampire supposedly becomes a vampire, their blood changes or whatever changes where all they want to eat is blood, right? That's all. But when you become a vegan, you like to become anti-blood. Nothing with blood in it, no excretions, no, by God. When you become an ethical vegan, like 100%, like for the animals, it's like Katie bar the door, do not. Yeah. And so that's what it was like for me. That's what was happening. I didn't know I was transitioning to become an ethical vegan. I had no idea it was even happening to me. And I didn't have any vegan friends. The only vegan friend I had was Rowdy Girl. That was it. So she was the only one giving me any messages. Nobody was waving a flag or blowing a horn or saying go vegan. None of that. It was quite interesting. And so on October 31st, it was on October 31st, we had a big fight the day before. It was a huge fight. Tommy he used to have a great big elk. He called it an heirloom that his great-grandpa had killed. And it was huge. It hung up in our house in Angleton, up in the apex of the ceiling. And he was so proud of that thing. And it was like, I think the night before, the day before, I wanted to hang him up on those antlers and leave him there. We were having such a big fight. You ever watch War of the Roses? Where they're hanging on the chandelier? That's the vision I have. I mean, if I could have just got him up there and left him. We were having that kind of fight. And on October 31st, I was crying, I was wailing in my office. I just was watching a bunch of slaughterhouse videos. I wouldn't stop watching them. I became obsessed with watching all this. I don't know what it was. It was like I had to know. And I would scream and cry, no, it ain't PETA propaganda. Come look at this. I don't want to see that. And I would just cry. Well, on October 31st, I came across a Dr. Melanie Joy. Ever heard of Dr. Melanie Joy? She has a dissertation on carnism that'll blow you away. And it's all about why we love pigs, wear cows, and eat dogs. No, why we love dogs, wear cows, and eat pigs, or something like that. She's got it, man. She's got the whole. She's very, very brilliant.
She's a psychiatrist. Right?
Yeah, she's a PhD.
I have read her book years and years ago.
She's brilliant. I've had the opportunity to meet her on several occasions, but I watched this little dissertation where everybody's sitting around a table eating beef stew, and somebody says, "What's the recipe?" And she says, "Well, you start off with a pound of very young golden retriever." And this is on Halloween, and I thought to myself, a golden retriever? A puppy. So they're eating stew with chopped up baby golden retrievers. I was just like, oh my God. Everybody that was on the other side of the screen was going, oh my God. And then she goes, oh, not really, just kidding, it's just a cow. It's really a cow. Just kidding. and nobody could eat. Nobody could keep eating because the image of a baby puppy had penetrated their brain. I was like, oh Lord, have mercy. My husband walks in and he says, Renee, get your makeup on. You need to do something. I had been crying. I was everything. He said, we got to get to my mother's house. It was every year on Halloween, we went over there for a little block party for all the kids with their costumes, and everybody sat outside and chit-chatted and had dinner and watched the little parade, all the kids in their costumes. So we were going to do that. So we go, I put my makeup on, laying, looking real nice, and we get over there and everybody's got their costume playing around. I walked in and my mother-in-law comes out, God rest her soul, her name is Effie, with a big old pot of, you guessed it. Hey, it was like I walked right into that script. I knew exactly what was about to happen. It was like I went out of the script at home, walked right into my mother-in-law's house. She comes out with a pot of beef stew. She sits it down. Oh, you can't make this up. And I was like, oh my God. And she said, Renee, would you like a bowl of beef stew? She's fixing to do that. I went, no! I can't eat that. I mean, it was just like, it was such a reaction. It was almost like, she goes, why? I mean, my mother-in-law is a very genteel, Southern lady, beautiful soul. And she was so offended. And I was like, I can't eat it. And she said, why? Everybody's playing, having a good time. I said, cuz it's got floating dead, hacked up animal bodies in it, and I ain't eating it. Everybody stopped talking. They looked right at me with their mouths open. And my mother-in-law says, what? I repeated myself, y'all, in the silence. I repeated, because it's got floating dead animal bodies in it, and I ain't eating it. My husband looked at me and said, Renee. I said, what? I said, it's done. It's over. And I mean, you talk about, how vampires, when they change, it's like, boom, and all of a sudden they want blood. Well, by God, the blood was out of my system. There ain't no more of that blood coming in my body. I was like, it had taken me years to come to this point. I didn't know I was transitioning, y'all. I had no idea I was becoming an ethical vegan. And when I became an ethical vegan that day, it was like something inside of me switched. It was a switch like nobody's business. And I was like Katie bar the door. That's all I know. And I went home, I started taking out all anything that had blood or flesh or eggs or milk or whatever, man, it was gone. I took it out of the house and I told King-Sonnen, you want to eat that stuff, you're going to eat it outside of this house, you will not eat it in this house. Well, this is my house too. I said, yeah, it is your house, but you ain't eating it here. You want to eat it? If you want to bring that stuff in here, I will throw it back out. I mean, I wasn't kidding. I wasn't a very nice person at that point. I wasn't a nice vegan to my husband. And with all due respect, I don't recommend it. Okay? But hey, so I guess somebody had to be that person in order to transition the first ever cattle ranch to a vegan farm. It took that type of personality. And so my husband was so mad at me. Oh my God, you talk about swing from the chandeliers then. Because here I am on a cattle ranch. He's not a vegan, I'm a vegan. And I'm not letting him sell cows. I said, you ain't selling nary another cow. No, you will not. And he used the word C-O-C-K. He said, don't block me. And I was like, oh, well, guess what? You do it. You try it. You take that trailer up the road one more time, I promise you, I will follow you. I will get in my car, drive all the way up to that sale barn, use your credit card, buy them all back, and bring them back home. Try it. And he was like, Renee, threw his hat on the ground. This is my blankety blank business. You stay out of my business. I said, it ain't no longer a business. It is not a business anymore. I'm done with this whole business. This is my family. I had started, and I said, when I said that out loud for the first time, he looked at me, and I felt something inside of me change, like there ain't no difference between whoever is looking through the eyes of a cow and who's looking out of the eyes of me. There ain't no difference. Whatever's inside, looking back, I have learned. You see, that's Houdini right there. I know her personally. She's one of Rowdy Girl's daughters. You know, I call her my granddaughter. People may think I'm crazy, doesn't really matter to me, you know? But that's the way I see it today. It's like I had to start seeing things in a whole different way in order to have this awakening. I had to start seeing things from their point of view instead of my point of view, because I want to taste it or sell it or wear it or drive it or use it or whatever, you know. I had to start seeing it from the animal's perspective. And so I did. And me and Tommy had a showdown. Alive, real. We didn't have guns, but thank God. But we were in the middle of the pasture. He was getting ready to do another thing where he was going to he was going to sell all the cows. He was just going to get out of the business altogether, and we were going to get a divorce. It was going to be over, you know. And I said to him, I said, well, now he didn't know this, so I have to be transparent here. I had started a blog called Vegan Journal of the Ranchers, Vegan Journal of the Cattle Rancher's Wife, and because I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have any vegan friends. And so here I am on a cattle ranch, vegan, no friends except Rowdy Girl, that's vegan. And I had to have friends, so I started looking up online, and I started finding these friends, and next thing you know, somebody told me, her name is Jeannie, she said, Renee, you need to have a blog, you need to start a blog about all this, and get some people around you, surrounding you up, and helping you figure out what to do, because I was afraid he was going to sell all these cows to the sale barn, and I couldn't have it. My heart, I would die first at that point. And so I did, and so I figured out I was going to buy my husband's cows. Now, he didn't know this. I was developing a plan. I was conspiring against him. And I had a plan. And I went to him and I said, look, if you're going to sell them all, why don't you sell them to me? Sell them to you? You lost your mind? I said, yep. Bonafide. And you know what? I really am happy with the one I got. And if you want to sell them cows, how much will you sell them to your wife for? This bargain right here. Oh, okay. He didn't know I was talking to anybody online. He didn't know I had a secret journal of a cattle rancher's wife going and amassing thousands of followers. Okay, they started coming out of woodwork, and he said, "All right, Renee, I'll play along. I could get, it was a small herd, you know, it was about 30, it wasn't a big herd, it was a small, you know, herd." And he said, I could probably get 35, 40,000, you know, at the sale barn. I'll sell them to you for 30. He was playing along. I said, okay, 30. I said, and will you lease the pasture to me for $1 a year? Sure, Renee. Ha. I said, how about 2 years? Sure, Renee. Okay. All right. Deal. I shook his hand. You shake his hand, it's as good as gold. You shake King-Sonnen's hand, it's done. You don't need a contract. So, I went back to my friends, and y'all, in less than 4 months, I bought my husband's cows. I had a fundraiser, I raised $36,000 online, bought his cows, and started Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. And my husband is now vegan. I went vegan October 31st. He went vegan May. Well, he went plant-based, whole food. He was actually not a whole food person, but he was a plant-based. And he didn't do it for any ethical reasons, but he started looking into Dr. T. Colin Campbell's book, and he thought, well, you know, my daddy died of a heart attack when he was 62. I can try this. So he did. He started losing weight, started feeling great, started feeling a lot better. And now he's co-founder. I wish he would have come tonight. He was going to. Y'all need to have him here for the speaker. Hear the other side of the story. But this is what happened. And you know what's interesting is our story. We started Rowdy Girl Sanctuary as a nonprofit. You got the information on your table there. We are a nonprofit. We are funded totally by members and donors. We have 620 members right now with an average of $22 a month donating to us. Right now we have over 100 and almost 140 animals. We have 70 bovines, 70 cows on our property. They all have names, they all have medical files. I know them all individually, one by one. Last year, I built a 100-foot by 80-foot beautiful cow house with our donors' help. We raised over $100,000 in our end of year campaign. I built that barn for them. Our cows have a beautiful barn that's going to end up being a medical treatment facility for aging bovine. Because all the vets in town, they do not know anything about treating the bovine as they age, because they're always slaughtered young, right? So we are developing technology for taking care of older animals, and so we're going to be doing all that right there. And the year before that, I raised $75,000 and built what I call the cow pantry. That's where their hay goes, and it's their hay barn. $125 a bale right now. But you know, hay is extremely expensive. Our hay barn is full. Why? Because I fundraise like crazy for them animals. I am on a mission, 100%, to help people see that if cattle ranchers can go vegan and live to tell about it and talk about it, why not? Why? We need to start opening our eyes to what's really happening in the world. There's things happening in our world that's just, it's really messed up. And so CBS Evening News has been at our place. We've been, I mean, that blasted out, that went viral. Southwest Airlines, Animal Planet. We've been on ABC, NBC, CBS. There's a major documentary out about our story right now called Rowdy Girl that just world premiered at Hot Docs. It's going to be in Korea in October. It's going to be in Long Island. It's going to be in Connecticut. It's going to be in San Francisco. The documentary Rowdy Girl is taken off. And my book, Secret Diary of a Cattle Rancher's Wife, was going to come out in October. I've been working on it for almost 3.5 years now. But now it has been picked up by a major writer that writes for like big film companies, and a major script writer. His name is Roger Wolfson. Kip Anderson and Cameron are with Cowspiracy and with Health. They're working with me on my book. They want to turn it into a TV series or a film that will be on major streaming. So, you know, hey, it took somebody like me to freaking go crazy on a cattle ranch, but I'm so convinced that this message needs to be out there, and other people think so too. Other people think this message needs to be out there. Why? If y'all are interested, I have a whole topic on it. I spoke about it at the Animal Vegan Advocacy Summit last month. I was a keynote there. You don't have it in front of you. If you want one of these, you're welcome to it. You just have to come ask me for it. I don't like it, or I'll pass it around and y'all can take it. But it's on Christian vegan activism. A lot of people, a lot of good Christian people, I'm a vegan Christian, right, straight up. But a lot of Christian people, good Christians, think that God gave us animals to eat. And I can blow that myth totally out of the water. And I have a talk on it on my YouTube channel. If you want to ever go to my YouTube, it's on Christian Vegan Advocacy, and I do this whole talk there. But yeah, that's the story. We are located in Welder, Texas. We have private tours. We are really going through a big drought right now. It's tough, as you know. We have not had an inch of rain. We have not had a drop of rain. I think a bird flew over and peed on us the other day, and we all thought, oh my God, it's raining! But you know, it was, so, you know, but we do still, we have a girl right now from the UK there volunteering. She's there for a week. People love coming to volunteer, and you can become a member. This card right here is, if you take a picture of that, it'll take you to our website where you can subscribe to our newsletter. We have what's called the Dispatch from the Ranch that we send out quarterly, and you can also become a member there. We currently have a chicken naming contest going on. We rescued 3 chickens about a month and a half ago from a desperate girl that just wandered up on our property, and so we rescued them. But we rescue every animal at Rowdy Girl Sanctuary was rescued from either slaughter or euthanization. We do not just take animals for no reason. They have to be threatened. Their life has to be threatened. And everybody knows that farm animals' lives are threatened every second of the day. So I don't have any more room for cows. I'm at capacity on 147 acres. But we do have room for goats and chickens and stuff like that if anybody ever wants to come our way with that. But anybody have any questions?
I do. So you talked about how many cows you have. How many other animals, how many pigs do you have right now?
Right now we have 3 really great big hogs rescued from FFA, Gizmo, Penny, and Rue. We have 3 potbellies. We have Ivy and Lotus and Lulu. And we have lots of chickens. You know, we recently just rescued 2 Muscovy ducks, Thelma and Lou. We've got a whole little flock of ducks. We've got lots of goats. We've got a donkey. We recently lost a donkey, Trixie. She died this past week. She was very old. So Trixie passed away, but her bonded pair, Dixie, is with us. We have 2 horses. We have a turkey named Sealy. We have 3 rabbits, and a partridge and a pear tree. Oh yeah, we do have dogs and cats, but they're not. Yeah, actually we have lots of dogs and cats. We have for our very own, like our own family members, and then we do have some cats at the sanctuary that were feral that we rescued. We don't tell everybody about that because we don't like rescue cats, but we have rescued some cats. Yeah. Yes.
How old's a cow gonna live if you were taking care of it?
How's it gonna live?
How old will it be?
Oh, when they live, you know, that's a very good question, thank you. We have one out there right now, her name is Agape. She's blind and she's 25. We take care of them until the day they die, not until the day they go to the cell barn. And what's interesting, or the slaughterhouse, what's interesting is people, like I deal with cattle ranchers all the time. The New York Times will be at Rowdy Girl Sanctuary in October. They're coming to do a story. Bon Appetit just interviewed me. We're gonna have a story in the Bon Appetit magazine. I mean, people approach me all the time. I don't go knocking on anybody's door. Our story has gone viral. It truly has. It's been translated in over a dozen languages. And your question is so important because that's the reason I have to always ask people to become members and to join us in this cause, because people sell these animals for money. They don't keep them because they're worthy of life. Nobody keeps cows, if you're a cattle rancher, because they're seen as worthy of living their life. They're here for a purpose. They're only here for a purpose. Yes.
Do you ever adopt any animals out?
That's also a good question. Our mission is not set up that way, but if people, like if you know people that have good land and they're the kind of people that would take animals that, you know, that might need a home, if I can't take them, I could recommend. Yeah, we don't like adopt them out from our place because once they come to Rowdy Girl, they're home forever.
Their name and they're
Somebody
there.
may need a home or something.
Yeah, but somebody may need a home, like, yeah, exactly.
We don't need any more.
That's a good, no, that's so good to know because,
We call it a Hank, my name's Hank, we call it the Hank Shore.
the Hank what?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And she said, no, that, guess who took in 2 foster puppies last night?
2 foster bunnies? Puppies. Yeah, animals are, you know, I just can't believe how animals are treated in our world today, and especially farm animals, chickens. Oh my God. You know, that's the other thing that we do. You know, part of the work I do is really advocating for farmers and ranchers that want to transition out of animal agriculture. There's people that want to do that. In fact, the whole angle of the Bon Appetit story, they want to interview my relationships with other cattle ranchers that I have. Because, you know, we get hay from a guy named Jerry Simon, and he's a big cattle rancher, and I talk to him all the time. He's getting ready to sell, like, you know, 200 of his head of cattle because of this drought, you know. People are selling their cows left and right because of this drought. They can't keep them. They can't feed them. But we feed them. We will not sell ours. That's why we need, you know, folks that really believe in this kind of work to just join as a member. I mean, we got one of our members here tonight. RJ came in, he's a member, and you joined as a member, and so I'm even a member. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you say you have lots of chickens or several chickens. Okay, well, do they, my biology class.
No, please ask, anything.
Do they continue to have eggs?
They do lay eggs.
What do you do with the eggs?
I love that question. Thank you for that question. Well, I actually have a little video that went viral some 2 years ago. I bet you it's been seen over 100,000 times. I answered that question with a cattle in a room with a cattle rancher. And I said to his wife, or to him, I said, what do you do with your wife's periods? And he looked at me and he said, what? I said, well, I mean, what do you do with what comes out of your wife's rear end? So I answered a question with a question. And it's like, it makes people go, oh, you're right. That does come out of a chicken. Oh, but it's got a shell on it. You think nothing can get through that shell? You really think nothing's going to penetrate through that shell? It's porous, right? And what it took, anyway, our chickens lay eggs, and we collect them, and we either feed them to the wild animals, or we just throw them out into the hay, or we take those eggs, and if we have some of our flock that's weak or depleted or whatever, we will boil those eggs, and we will mix in nutrients like spirulina and different nutrients that I buy for the flock, and we would grind it all up and feed it back to them, because their little systems are so depleted, because they have to lay an egg every day. That ain't normal. They're genetically modified to lay an egg every day. In the wild, years ago, they used to lay 12, 13 eggs a year, just like we do.
You're kidding.
No, I am not kidding.
I've read that before, yeah.
They're not supposed to lay an egg every day. That's all. Humans have created machines out of animals. They've turned them into commodities, widgets, things, so that they can make money.
And that's
Because it's not healthy. Huh?
That's why their life expectancy isn't what used to be
Yeah.
either.
That's why they have such terrible reproductive diseases and stuff that we have to pay vets for. Yes, ma'am.
Do you sterilize the animals to keep your, so your
Yeah.
numbers don't grow?
Yeah, none of the animals at our sanctuary breed. No. Mm-mm. Everybody is the girls don't have to be sterilized. The males do, because you don't want to like give a cow a hysterectomy, but you sterilize the males. Yep. Yeah. No, it's good questions.
Very, very good question. I actually had thought about the eggs. I wonder what you do with your eggs, because I figured chickens were laying.
The fact that we even asked that question is so interesting. I tell this story sometimes, when I feel like it. I say, well, it'd be like somebody coming in the middle of the night and looking up under your covers and snatching whatever's up underneath your butt and putting it in the refrigerator and scrambling it for breakfast. Does that sound appealing? I mean, really, that's what we're doing. Let's look at what we're really doing, I mean, somebody has to shine. It's kind of like the emperor with no clothes. Somebody has to say, hey, what is wrong with this picture? Why are we doing this? Why are we taking baby calves out of the mamas and throwing them in a wheelbarrow with the mama running after it and the baby, being shoved in a wheel crate with thousands and thousands and thousands? What are we doing that for?
And that sound when that mama cow is crying for their babies, that's heart-wrenching.
It happens.
Yeah,
It's the most,
heart-wrenching.
to think that they have no feelings, that they, here's animals that have eyes, they have a heart, they have everything we have. They have babies, they have a soul. I'm convinced they have a soul. For us to think they don't, the only reason we think they don't is so that we can commodify and use them. Because if we really see them, we can't do that. If we really see them, we cannot eat them. If we see them. I tell my mama, I'll tell her that, our cows have babies And I said, that's their children. She'll say, Renee, don't tell me those cows have children. They don't have children, they have calves. Oh, so it's not their children. No, of course not. Because if you look at it that way, you can't eat them. So, yeah. But anyway, that's the story in a nutshell. And would love for you to come if there's.
Oh, yeah. I think we ought to get a group together and go check it out. I think we would. Renee said it was about an hour to get
Yeah.
here. That's not bad. That's like going to San Antonio or Austin. And we all do that, so.
People come, like groups will come and bring like their own food and stuff like that. And
Have a picnic
and
with
do
the
a
cows?
picnic, and yeah, you can do that. And you can have a little volunteer day, and people do it all the time with organizations. So.
Yeah,
Does
I
that make
think
sense?
I think we would really all enjoy doing that.
Questions anymore? We done?
When-
had one?
When it cools down, Jerry, that's a very good thing to think about.
You had a question?
Yes, at our house, we have several pets that pass away, and it's hard to dig anywhere because they're buried everywhere in our yard. But I was wondering, with your cows, that when they pass away, you're saying you're gonna keep them till they're older. Will you be burying them, or will you be maybe using them for compost later? Because to my understanding, there's a new program for humans, that when you pass away, another option is you can have them turned into like fertilizer and use it for the earth. So only if you're thinking of that kind of program later on, maybe?
No. We dig a hole and bury them. And so that's what we do. We have a big backhoe and we bury them. And we have a veganic garden. And we don't use any animal inputs in our garden whatsoever. We have an almost a yard, what is it? I don't know, what is it called? Acre and a half, my brain. We have an acre and a half of really, really great area where my husband has grown the best food. And we use no animal inputs, like on purpose. And so one of our missions is to teach people how to grow food that's veganic, it is organic, but it's also doesn't have the bone meal, the blood meal, the feathers, all the decomposed, whatever that might be in organic compost. So, yeah, we have that kind of program. And the other program we have is our Families Choosing Compassion program. Families Choosing Compassion is where kids in FFA or 4-H surrender their animals to us. We have a lot of animals at Rowdy Girl that were surrendered by FFA, 4-H families. And then we have Rancher Advocacy Program, where we inspire, motivate, and encourage cattle ranchers to transition out of animal ag into other types of farming. We have worked with a chicken farmer. That is, we have actually done an exhaustive research and development mushroom operation there. We've grown mushrooms there. We've sold mushrooms there. It's dormant right now. We're trying to figure out what else we're going to do over there. But needless to say, hundreds and thousands of dollars have gone in that. So we really work to do whatever we can to help farmers find a different way if they want. And I also am on the board of directors of the Agriculture Fairness Alliance. It's a 501c4 lobbying group, and we go to DC. My partner lives in DC. We appeal to Congress to get legislation changed so that farmers, can all have, it can be fair and balanced for farmers that want to transition to plants instead of growing plants like soy or corn and all for animals to eat. How about we grow food for people to eat and give farmers an incentive?
Yeah, let's subsidize that.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. So I actually go probably 3 times a year to Washington. We're working really hard to get the Farm Bill changed, to get anything in the Farm Bill. I mean, come on, let's face it. I mean, it's really tough. Yeah.
You're
It's
going
tough.
after Goliath.
But you do it.
Yeah.
I was going after Goliath whenever I shut down my husband's farm.
Yes, you
So
did.
I
And you
might as
won that
well,
one.
I might as well just keep on going. So, because we have to, so that is part of the work I do. Like I said, when I first started, I'm on a mission. I'm not here for any other reason than to change the system. Yes, ma'am.
Did you get any of his family members to change?
Nobody's changed. Now, his sister's kind of on the rocks, but the hardest people are your family. You know,
It's
hardest
the same
people.
way with whole food, plant-based, it's our family members that
Yeah.
it's hard to get them to change.
So many people have converted and gone vegan because of our story. There's a documentary out called Vegan Everyday Stories that we were featured in. You can find it on YouTube. And so, anyway, I'll be around if y'all want to talk a little bit later, but thank you so much. It's been very,